My name is April, and at 25 years old, my boyfriend Thomas dumped me because I didn't like the new Snow White movie. He said it revealed my true character. I laughed, because how could anyone say that with a straight face? But he wasn't joking. Not even a little. So I did something about it, and now he's the one begging to get back together. Have you ever watched your life crumble in real time? Like you're standing outside of yourself, witnessing the wreckage, while the soundtrack is some overproduced Disney princess anthem about empowerment and independence? Yeah, that was me. A full-blown existential crisis scored by a CGI bird chorus. And if you've ever been betrayed by someone who was supposed to believe in you, stick around. You'll understand exactly where this is going. It started as a normal Friday night. One of those rare evenings when I didn't have 10 open tabs in my brain labeled laundry, deadlines, groceries, and do I have clean socks? Thomas had been raving all week about seeing the new Snow White remake. Now I'd already read the reviews, and disastrous would have been a compliment. Critics called it everything from unwatchable to emotionally confusing. One reviewer even described it as a cursed TikTok filter stretched over 2 hours. So, yeah, my expectations were low, but Thomas was glowing with excitement. This is going to be revolutionary, he said as we got into the car, eyes wide like he was about to attend a TED Talk on moral philosophy instead of a movie about a girl who talks to woodland creatures. It's not about a man saving her anymore. It's about independence, power, self-definition. I smiled and nodded. I like independence, I said, because honestly, what was I supposed to reply? I was trying to be supportive. Plus, I don't mind reinterpretations of classic stories. I just prefer when they, work. The theater was half full, the popcorn was stale, and Thomas was tearing up before the opening credits had finished rolling. Then the movie started, and I swear, I have no words strong enough to describe what we witnessed. Imagine Snow White, rewritten by a marketing committee that once skimmed a feminism think piece on Instagram and decided that subtlety was oppression. Every line of dialogue was a lecture, every scene a moral thesis. The characters weren't acting, they were reciting manifestos. The evil queen had more emotional range than Snow White, and the new CGI dwarfs, now called magical forest beings, looked like rejected AI prototypes from a fantasy video game. Halfway through, there was this massive musical number. Snow White, twirling dramatically, singing about leadership and solitude and independence from emotional attachment. I'm still not sure. The lyrics sounded like someone fed a motivational quote account through a blender. I accidentally let out a soft chuckle. Not a laugh, just a tiny puff of disbelief. The kind of sound any sane person makes when witnessing something unintentionally comedic. Thomas turned to me with the expression of a man who'd just watched someone insult his ancestors. His eyes were wide, his mouth tight. I mouthed sorry, even though I wasn't sorry at all. He turned back to the screen, shoulders stiff. After the movie, we walked to the car in silence. I waited for him to break it, to say something like, well, that was interesting. But no. His jaw was locked, and he was gripping the steering wheel like he was about to give a sermon. Finally, he spoke. I can't believe you laughed, I blinked. Thomas, it was one breath. Not even a full laugh. He didn't look at me. It's not just that. It's what it says about you. What it says about me. You didn't get it, he said sharply. You mocked it. I didn't mock anything. I just acknowledged reality. It wasn't good. He turned, his face full of disappointment. It was good. It was brave. It was challenging. It was long, I muttered. Wrong move. He pulled into my driveway and stopped the car. I don't think we're compatible. I stared at him. Wait, what? He exhaled through his nose like he was centering himself before an argument. You don't understand the importance of representation, or progress, or growth. I blinked slowly. Because I didn't like Snow White? No, he snapped. Because you laughed at it. You didn't even try to see the message. Thomas, I said carefully. I just sat through 2 hours of what felt like a corporate slideshow set to music. I think I tried. He shut off the engine. This isn't just about a movie. It's about your worldview, and I can't be with someone who doesn't share mine. And just like that, he got out of the car, said nothing more, and drove off. I stood there in my driveway, holding a half-eaten bag of popcorn, wondering if this was some sort of surrealist performance art. Because, come on, I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I didn't forget his birthday. I laughed during a movie, and apparently, that was unforgivable. That night, I sat on my couch in the glow of my laptop, scrolling through bad reviews of the same movie that just ruined my relationship. Maybe it was rock bottom, but at least rock bottom had Wi-Fi and frozen pizza. I texted my friend Ryan, got dumped over Snow White. He replied instantly, "Like the Disney one?" I sent a thumbs up. His next message read, "Good. You were way too normal for him anyway." I laughed for real this time, because as absurd as it was, it still stung. I'd spent a year caring about someone who apparently thought my worth could be measured by my reaction to a CGI princess, but I didn't text him. I didn't call. I didn't post a cryptic Instagram story about healing or empowerment. Something inside me whispered, this wasn't really about Snow White. It was something deeper, something he'd been holding on to, waiting for a reason to end things. 3 days later, I was still processing it, still replaying the conversation in my head like I was cross-examining myself in a courtroom. Was my laugh too loud? Did I trigger some long-buried childhood trauma involving animated apples? Day 2 was anger, quiet, simmering anger, the kind that hums beneath your skin. The realization that I'd spent months doing emotional labor for someone who decided I wasn't morally aligned enough for him because I didn't cry during a Disney reboot. By day 3, clarity arrived like an unexpected visitor. The flashbacks began. The first red flag? Encanto. We watched it together. He cried. I said, "It was sweet. Music was great." That was apparently blasphemy. He accused me of minimizing immigrant trauma. I thought we were still talking about Bruno. Another time, I mentioned that The Handmaid's Tale made me feel more depressed than inspired. He said my reaction was privileged and that I had a duty to sit with discomfort. I apologized. Because back then, I thought You're Right was a peace offering. I didn't realize I was slowly funding an emotional Ponzi scheme. Thomas didn't watch stories, he worshipped them. Every show, every book, every movie became a moral exam. If I didn't react correctly, I failed. I wasn't a partner. I was a test subject, but I hadn't noticed. Because between the lectures were real moments of warmth. Movie nights, lazy Sundays, cooking together, laughing about coworkers. I thought that mattered. Apparently it didn't. Apparently the princess test carried more weight than everything else. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized his breakup speech, "It's about your worldview," wasn't spontaneous. It was rehearsed, too polished, too scripted, like he'd written it down weeks ago just waiting for a moral excuse to deliver it. That's when it hit me. Thomas didn't dump me because of Snow White. The movie was just a prop, a convenient exit ramp. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I opened Instagram. His latest story? A black screen with white text. Sometimes the hardest thing is realizing someone you love doesn't stand for what you believe in. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my wine. Because if that was his grand statement, then fine. Let him have his moral epiphany. I had mine too. And mine was simple. If a man can't handle a laugh during Snow White, he definitely can't handle a woman who writes her own fairy tale. Moving forward, when letting go self-worth. No mention of Snow White. Of course, that would have sounded unhinged, but he was clearly framing me as the emotionally stunted villain in his personal hero's journey. That's when I realized what I was really feeling. Not heartbreak, not bitterness, defamation. Okay, not legally, but the narrative was being hijacked, and I was being quietly turned into the ex-girlfriend who didn't get it, the one who lacked depth, the woman who laughed when it mattered most, and that didn't sit right with me. So, I did what any normal, slightly petty, mostly sarcastic person would do. I wrote about it, not to name names, not to start drama, just to process it. I posted in a mid-sized forum, not Reddit's front page or anything public enough to cause backlash, just a space for relationship stories. Half rants, half reflections. The title: Got dumped because I didn't like Snow White. No, seriously. I expected a few replies, maybe 1 or 2 sarcastic takes. Instead, the comments rolled in. Some people found it hilarious. Others shared their own breakups over nonsense stories. Someone got dumped for saying they preferred Pepsi, another because they didn't cry during The Fault in Our Stars. But one comment stood out. It was from someone who said, "If he broke up with you over that, he didn't leave you because of your worldview. He left you because he wanted a reason." That hit because it felt true. And as I read that, a message popped up on my phone from Thomas. Just one line. "Hey, can we talk?" And I knew the story wasn't over yet. "Hey, can we talk?" 4 words, no context, no punctuation except the ellipses, which made it even worse. There's something about an ellipsis that feels like someone softly knocking on your mental door at 3 a.m. with absolutely no plan once you open it. I stared at his message for a full minute, unsure whether to laugh, roll my eyes, or forward it to the Disney help desk with a note. "Your movie broke my relationship. Please advise." After a moment, I locked my phone and put it face down. Another moment later, I flipped it over and replied, "About what?" I figured if he wanted to start a conversation, he could be the one to explain what kind of conversation we were having. Casual catch-up, closure, attempted reunion, trial by ideology. He replied almost instantly, "Not over text. Can we meet?" And just like that, I was back in the interrogation chair. Only this time, I had the benefit of hindsight, context, and several thousand online strangers who had reassured me I wasn't the only person who'd been emotionally mugged over media criticism. I agreed to meet. We chose a coffee shop, neutral ground, public, well-lit, a place where even the most intense emotional manipulations would have to be whispered. I got there early, ordered black coffee, sat by the window like someone who wasn't half curious and half terrified of what came next. Thomas arrived 5 minutes late, looking polished but off, like someone who had dressed confidently but hadn't slept well. He sat down and gave a tight smile. "Thanks for meeting me," I nodded. "Sure." There was an awkward silence while he stirred. His tea like it had personally offended him. Then he launched into it. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened, Mike," he said, "and I realized maybe I overreacted." I raised an eyebrow. "Overreacted to your reaction. I should have been more open-minded about your perspective." It sounded rehearsed, like he'd said it out loud in front of a mirror at least 3 times before showing up. I waited. He looked at me expectantly. "You dumped me over a movie," I said finally, then posted vague, dramatic quotes like I'd betrayed their assistants. "That wasn't about you." "It literally was," he sighed. "Okay, maybe it was. But I didn't expect people to take it the way they did." There it was. This wasn't an apology. It was PR damage control. "I heard about the post you made," he said, eyes flicking up at me. "The one where you joked about the breakup?" I sipped my coffee. "Didn't name you." "No, but everyone knew it was me." "Not really," I said, "unless they had prior knowledge of your deep spiritual connection to a movie with 14% on Rotten Tomatoes." He blinked. I smiled politely, "But go on." He leaned forward. "I just feel like I was made to look irrational, like I ended things over nothing." "Well," I said, "I wouldn't say nothing. You ended it over a Disney remake that most people watch through their fingers. You're missing the point." "No," I said calmly. "I think I finally got the point. You didn't break up with me because of Snow White. You used it as a pretext." His jaw tightened. "You'd already made up your mind," I continued. "The movie just gave you a neat little stage to perform it on." "That's not fair," he said. "Isn't it? You'd been pulling away for weeks, questioning my values, making weird comments like, 'I just don't know if you see the world the right way.' I thought we were having deep conversations. Turns out I was being interviewed." He looked down, and I passed until I laughed during the wrong scene. He didn't respond to that. Instead, he said softly, "I miss you." I sat back because sure, I missed him too. I missed the parts of him that used to laugh at my dumb jokes and send me voice notes about birds he saw on the way to work. I missed the late-night ramen runs and Sunday laundry days where we'd fold clothes while watching documentaries we barely finished. But I didn't miss being on trial. I didn't miss walking on eggshells. I didn't miss wondering whether my next movie review would be seen as a moral failing. I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said, "So why did you want to meet?" I hesitated. I guess I thought maybe we could try again now that we've had some space, even though I still don't like Snow White. That earned the faintest smile from me. "Maybe I overestimated how much that mattered," he said. I nodded slowly. "Or maybe you underestimated how much everything else did." And there it was. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sarcastic. I was just tired. Tired of trying to justify basic human disagreements as evidence of deep incompatibility. Tired of relationships where liking or disliking a film was treated like an ethical stance. He didn't reply. We sat in silence for a moment, the hum of espresso machines filling the space, where I'm sorry probably should have gone. Eventually, he stood up. Well, he said, it was good seeing you. You too, and he left. I stayed a while longer, finishing my coffee, staring out the window. Later that evening, I got another message, this one from a mutual acquaintance. Just so you know, Thomas has been telling people you wrote that post to control the narrative and punish him emotionally. Thought you should hear it from someone who doesn't buy it. I didn't reply. I just sat with it because of course he did. And suddenly it wasn't just about Snow White. It wasn't even about the breakup. It was about control narrative, how people rewrite reality to suit their version of events, and what happens when you quietly, calmly refuse to let them. And I knew I was never going back because the moment you realize someone values their image of you more than you, that's when you stop apologizing for breathing wrong. That's when you walk away for real this time. But yeah, I still don't like Snow White. I didn't answer the message. The one from our mutual friend telling me Thomas was now saying I wrote the post to punish him, that I was manipulating public perception and weaponizing storytelling. I had to read that line twice just to confirm I wasn't hallucinating, weaponizing storytelling. I mean, sure, I used a few snappy lines. Maybe I got a little too poetic with the popcorn analogy. But if telling people the truth about how your boyfriend dumped you over Snow White now counts as psychological warfare, then I guess I'm some kind of low-budget Bond villain with a Wi-Fi connection and a mild caffeine dependency. I didn't reply. Not to the friend, not to Thomas, not to anyone. I figured if the point of the last year of my life was to slowly teach him the value of silence, I might as well graduate with honors. But the fallout wasn't as easy to ignore as I'd hoped. That weekend, I got 2 messages from people I hadn't spoken to in months. Both opened with some variation of, "So, I heard about the breakup," which is never a fun way to start a conversation. One of them was Thomas's ex-roommate, who proceeded to tell me very politely that Thomas was now referring to me as emotionally repressive and politically indifferent, which I've got to say is a bold accusation to throw at someone who once sat through a 6-part documentary on plastic pollution without checking her phone. But sure, let's add politically indifferent to the list of crimes. It was almost impressive. I'd been dumped less than a week ago, and I was already being painted as a morally vacant, emotional zombie with no understanding of narrative nuance, all because I didn't cry when CGI Snow White said something about inner sovereignty. At one point, I told a friend, if I'd known the stakes were this high, I would have taken notes during the film. Shalad. But the truth was, I felt this weird mix of frustration and freedom. Frustration because no matter what I said or did, Thomas was going to spin the story, and freedom because for once I didn't have to play along. By Monday, I started getting follow-up comments on my original post. Nothing viral, just a slow trickle of strangers chiming in with things like, "You dodged a bullet." Imagine staying in a relationship where you need a Disney-approved worldview just to survive. Someone wrote, "This happened to my brother, except it was about Avatar, the way of water and veganism." The internet's a weird place, but also kind of healing in the most dysfunctional way. Still, I didn't want to be known as the Snow White girl. That wasn't the legacy I'd envisioned for myself. I had hobbies. I had a real job. I once built a standing desk out of plywood and stubbornness. I had more to offer the world than breakup satire. But something about this whole thing stuck with me. Not the drama, not the breakup, the story. Because here's what I realized. The problem wasn't that Thomas loved that movie. The problem was that he used it as a morality test. And I failed by having a sense of humor. It was never about the film. It was about control. And I wasn't supposed to laugh. I was supposed to agree, nod solemnly, validate his outrage, parrot it back with more emphasis, like a mirror, not a girlfriend. And when I didn't, he walked. And then he narrated my walkout as a personal betrayal of his values, of femininity, of art, of him. It was bizarre. It was manipulative. It was also familiar. Because once I started thinking about it, I realized how many conversations we'd had where I'd been quietly correcting myself mid-sentence, how many shows I'd pretended to like, how many jokes I'd softened just in case he didn't find them emotionally constructive. It's not that I was afraid of him. I was afraid of what version of me he'd create next if I ever said the wrong thing. And now that version was out there being told to friends, co-workers, maybe even strangers at the cafe he liked to write poetry in. I could hear it now. She just didn't get it. She laughed when I was crying. She refused to grow. But I did grow, just not in the direction he wanted me to. Tuesday morning, I walked to the bookstore near my place and bought myself a copy of The Uses of Enchantment. It's a book about fairy tales, my little nod to poetic justice. I also bought a hot sandwich and a cappuccino and sat by the window watching a dad try to wrangle a toddler who wanted to wear a plastic sword into a pet store. The kid kept yelling, "I'm a king!" And honestly, same buddy. When I got home, I opened a blank document and just wrote. Not about Thomas, not even about the movie. Just about how strange it is that people use stories to justify treating each other like they're characters in a film. Someone to root for or villainize, like life is one long metaphor, and your partner's opinion on a screenplay can somehow reveal the content of their soul. It felt good to write something honest, not performative, not bitter, just mine. So yeah, that's where I am now. Single, relieved, still low-key annoyed every time someone mentions that movie, but also clear-eyed, grounded, and more importantly, free. Free from walking on eggshells, free from being interpreted, free from sitting through movies with the fear that one raised eyebrow might turn into an indictment of my character. It's weird to say this out loud, but I'm grateful. Grateful to be out of something that looked like love but felt like surveillance. And grateful I had a place to tell the story. Because yes, some people told me I overreacted. Some said I should have begged him to take me back. Some said it's just a movie, dude. But others told me I wasn't crazy, that I was allowed to laugh, that having boundaries isn't a moral flaw. And yeah, I know not everything needs to be posted online. I know some people will roll their eyes and call this whole thing petty. But sometimes writing something down is how you make peace with the parts of your life that didn't make sense while they were happening. So yeah, I got dumped over a Disney movie. And if that's the most absurd sentence I ever write, I think I'm doing okay. Thanks for reading. And hey, what do you think? Was I overreacting or did I dodge something big? Let me know below.